1 scale. Now the bike that I found online, I'm just going to copy the dimensions. I knew it was a large mountain bike, and so I went through and I got all the dimensions for the whole thing. So when you draw your bike, the first thing you're going to need is kind of a wheelbase line that should be through from edge to edge, nice horizontal line, just like you see on the screen. Now, from that line, that's our wheelbase line. What we need to do is measure down for your bottom bracket. So I'm going to measure down just a little bit. My bottom bracket drop is the measurement I'm using, and that was 52 millimeters. So I'm going to draw a line down, 52 millimeters, and then now we'll draw the bottom bracket. And the bottom bracket is a perfect circle, so you'll want to use your compass for this. So I'm going to draw kind of an exaggerated circle, but this will be my bottom bracket. 40 millimeters is the diameter of that. All right. So from my bottom bracket, now what I can do is measure out my seat tube angle. So my seat tube angle will be coming from the center of my bottom bracket, and I'll be using a protractor for that because that's going to help you measure your angles. Now my seat tube angle is at 73.7. So I'm going to use my protractor, again drawing from the center of my bottom bracket, finding 73 degrees. I'm going to actually draw up. I'm just going to make that kind of a nice long line. We don't know how long my seat tube will be, but I know that at least is my seat tube angle. All right, now from there I can put in my seat tube length, and my seat tube length on this large mountain bike is about 483. So again, measuring, I can measure up, and I can measure that my seat tube length is about here. So that would be the top of my seat tube. All right, so we got the seat tube done, bottom bracket, and bottom bracket drop done. Next thing I need to draw is my chainstay length. My chainstay length on this bike is about 462 millimeters. So again, I'm going to, chainstay goes from your wheelbase line to your bottom bracket. I'm going to measure out 462, and I'm going to draw that line. All right, now where those two intersect, right back here, this is going to be my rear dropout. I have some templates. If you want, you can actually trace a dropout on there. Mine would look, mine's kind of a single speed, so I'm going to have a nice horizontal drop, and it kind of looks something like that. So if you want to trace it, I have another one that actually has a derailleur hanger on there. So if you want to do that, you can do that too. But you want to kind of put exactly where your dropout will be. I'm going to color this in just a little bit. So you want to be able to show the people, hey, this is the dropout we're going to use. All right. So I know that's exaggerated, but that's okay. All right, now that we got the rear end drawn, we're going to, oh no, we don't have the rear end drawn. We've got to draw our seat stay. So I'm going to measure down from my seat tube. I'm going to measure down about 40 millimeters and get a line. And then now I'm going to actually connect that line to my dropout. So this would be my seat stay. That's where that's going to be. All right, I like these darker lines that are starting to appear. All right. All right, now we're going to go and measure and draw up the front end. And the front end is based on our wheelbase. And so we're going to measure from all the way back from my rear dropout to my front dropout. And on this bike, my wheelbase is really long. It's 1160 millimeters. So that's almost all the way into my line, which is about out here. So this is where my front axle is. All right. Now, what we can do is to figure out how to draw the whole front end. We've got our wheelbase measurement now, and we will measure our head tube angle. And my head tube angle on this bike is at 67.7. So using that protractor again, I can measure back kind of lightly 67.7. All right. Now that's not actually it's the head tube angle, but that's not actually the head tube. So what we still need to do, we need to draw the offset and the axles of crown length on this bike. I remember we were talking about that earlier. And so what we have to do is we have to draw a circle from that axle, and that will be our offset. So my offset on this bike is 51 millimeters. So I'm going to draw a circle. All right, and that's my offset. And so I can take this from here. I can draw my my line from my center of my axle to that offset line, and this is actually where I'm going to draw my head tube angle. So now I've got I'm going to draw a parallel line to that line earlier, and it goes from my offset length, and this is actually my head tube angle now. All right, so we've got our offset head tube angle, and now we'll put in our axle to crown length, which on this bike is 503 millimeters. And so I'm going to mark that. 503 is about here. So now I can draw a line. This would be my offset line, or my axle to crown line on my fork. All right. Now from here I can actually, I probably should extend that head tube length further. All right. Now now that I have where the bottom of my headset is, I can actually put in my headset length, or my head tube length, and my head tube is 120 millimeters, so that's about here. All right. And so now we know no, actually, my head tube should be longer than that. My head tube is going to be about up to here. Right? So now I can actually use that to find my effective top tube, and this is just something you can double check. My effective top tube will go from the top of the head tube in the middle to my seat tube in the middle, and I can double check that measurement, and you can check that on yours, and that should match up if you've done everything correctly. It's kind of a good place to check. All right, now that my head tube is drawn, I'm going to actually drop down about 40 millimeters and put a dot there, and I'm going to go up about 45 millimeters and put a dot there, and now I'm going to actually connect those and to my bottom bracket. So this would be my down tube. There's my down tube, and then this would be my I'm going to connect here from my top tube on the seat tube and the head tube. So that's kind of the outline or the skeleton of your bike frame. All right. Now I know the dropout looks silly and the bottom bracket looks silly, but that's just because I can't draw it to scale like you guys can. Now the next part I would do here is I'm going to add a title block, and this title block will have the name of the bike frame, and it'll have my name, it'll have the bike frame size, and it'll have the date in there. So this was a spot, and it was a large. It's not working out. Today was 9, 10, 19. So make sure you add all the information about bike. And I am Jesse. So add that in your title block as well. All right. Now, the next thing you guys need to do is add the dimensions so that everyone knows what you've actually drawn. And so for this step, I'm actually going to use another color, and I'm going to use a red for that. So I'm going to go through and dimension it. First thing I'll dimension is my seat tube angle. My seat tube angle was 70. No. My seat tube was 73.7 degrees. And my head tube angle was 67.7. Make sure you're labeling it. My top tube effective, so you label that with TTEFF, is equal to 626 millimeters. My seat tube is equal to 483 millimeters. My B drop is equal to 52 millimeters. My chain stay was equal to 460. My head tube is equal to 120 millimeters. My offset down here was 51 millimeters. It's called axle to crown, was 50.3 centimeters. All right, and then my wheelbase, I'm going to draw kind of the dark red line, and then I'll say WB equals 1160. All right, so just double checking. I got my seat tube length, head tube, seat tube, bottom bracket drop, chainstay, head tube length, axle crown, top tube effective. That should be it. So this is kind of what I'm looking for from you today, and tomorrow make sure you're working with a friend. Make sure you draw precisely. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.